Okay, so we'll get going. Thanks everybody for being here and for having me. Thanks especially to Mark. I see Mark on the screen here. That's who I've been talking with most of the time, and thank you to Jasper and the rest of the team. Happy to be here. I'm the Canadian distributor for Beet It Sport. So I'm gonna go through a whole bunch of things today. I'm gonna sort of start off with a little bit of background on myself, who I am, how I came to be here, my exposure to Beat It, and then I'll sort of talk about nitrate itself, how nitrate works, what it does, talk a little bit about the science behind Beat It, and then talk a little bit about the product itself, what makes it different, what sets it apart, and then how to best use it as an athlete in your training and in competition. So we'll get right into it here. So a little bit about me. I have an undergrad and a master's in human nutritional sciences. I've always, my whole life, kind of been interested in not so much sports in general. There was never a particular sport I really latched onto. I was always interested in everything, played a lot of different sports, did a lot of different things. But what always really caught my interest was athleticism over the activity itself. So if you could show me somebody that was a freak at table tennis, I'll watch table tennis to watch that person play. I was always interested in what made somebody who was competing against the best make those people look like amateurs. That was always what really struck me, and I was always interested in how they did that. If you took the training out of it, what made that person different in their genetics, in their physiology, and then maybe it was something they were doing besides that. Maybe it was their nutrition, their supplementation. um, training is great, and it gets you there, but once you have two people doing the same thing, what makes somebody else better than that other person? That's what really always held my interest. um, so I kind of knew when I decided to go back to school and go into nutrition, I knew that my focus would be on sport nutrition and supplementation. There's no dedicated pathway towards that. You sort of get all the information, which is great. You get a real solid nutrition background, but sport nutrition is where I knew it was really at for me. Um, so I kind of wanted to set myself aside and figure out, how do I get into that world. And so I had some time to kill. How do I set myself apart from my peers? I was a bit of a nerd, still am. So I decided to get into research. I was reading research articles. The more I read through my schooling, the more I got interested in how do they actually do this. So I ended up actually approaching my sport nutrition professor at the time and applying for what's called an undergraduate research award. Got that. She took me on as a student. The year was 2013 at that point, and the Europeans had been drinking a lot of beet juice, and there was a lot of research starting to come out about nitrate supplementation, but in particular with beetroot juice. And so that's sort of where we went. I was really fortunate to just kind of get thrown into a project. I thought I was going to be an extra set of hands in the lab. I ended up getting a full clinical trial to run. That was a summer project, ended up becoming a senior thesis. Many almost tearful days of why am I doing a full course load plus running a full clinical trial by myself. But it ended up being a real blessing. I got to do something that was really cool and got a lot of skills and experience, stuff to add to the resume. Decided to move on to do my master's in 2015. And I came to mostly love conducting research. There's some pretty dry parts about it, but for the most part, I love it. It's really cool. You get to do some cool stuff, especially working with athletes. It's a ton of fun, trying to help them become better through science. So while I was doing my master's, I ended up having the opportunity to join a large scale research project. It was a huge study on health. We looked at everything. We had almost 1,000 people in the study. We looked at everything from how they were breastfed as babies to how they slept last night to their physical fitness, their bone density. We did everything. Huge project. I got a lot of skills out of that, and that led to a lot of opportunities for me to work on a variety of different studies. Completed almost every role you can imagine, from writing the proposals all the way to writing the manuscripts and everything in between. Um, I still have a day job in addition to running the distribution for Beet It. I'm a clinical research coordinator with a nephrology team. So we work with dialysis patients and look at different drug, nutrition, and exercise interventions to kind of make their very difficult condition a little bit better. So that's sort of where I'm at currently. So my introduction to Beet It, I knew for a while that I would end up working in research, but I still really wanted to help athletes. That was where my passion lies. And clinical research is where the jobs were, but I knew that I wanted to get into something still one day where I could work with athletes and help them become better athletes. My interest in this only increased as I went through my schooling, and I consider myself very lucky that I was actually able to do some personal interest stuff through my schooling. Typically, you sort of take the project that's given to you for a master's or for a PhD. I was very lucky that I kind of got to pick and do it on something I was really interested in, which at the time happened to be nitrate supplementation. So I worked exclusively with nitrates from beetroot. It is now currently one of the most widely studied and supported areas of supplementation. Nitrate supplementation is right up there with things like creatine in terms of the body of evidence behind it, the number of studies, and the number of studies showing positive benefits in a wide variety of populations. So to talk a little bit about the early studies, nitrate was often sourced from sodium nitrate or potassium nitrate, but predominantly from beetroot. Very quickly it switched over to beetroot, and more specifically beetroot juice, because it's a lot easier to drink the juice than eat the actual beets, especially if you're going to ask somebody to then get on a treadmill or a bike in a lab and breathe through a tube and go to exhaustion. You don't want 5 beets in their stomach with all the fiber and things like that. It's not good for the athlete, and it's not good for anybody in the room with them. So beetroot juice is kind of where everybody sort of gravitated to. Sodium and potassium nitrate work as well, but we're always looking for whole food sources of things, and if you can get something just naturally out of the ground and just take the juice out of it and get the same benefit that you could from something that's made synthetically or maybe has some heavier processing, people always gravitate towards that. So that's really where beetroot juice kind of came in. And the majority of beetroot juice studies out there use the same product. The vast majority, actually, it's almost a monopoly. So following suit, we use the same product in the studies that I conducted all the way from 2013. And that product, of course, was Beet It Sport. Originally, the first study I did, the sport version wasn't actually available. We used the old, just regular version, which had 300 milligrams of nitrate per serving. Beet It Sport is just a higher dose, really made for athletes. That has 400 milligrams at minimum per serving. So to talk a little bit about nitrate, we'll talk about nitrate, nitrite, and nitric oxide. So when I say nitrate, or nitrate, sorry, I'm talking about dietary nitrate, and that's inorganic nitrate that's naturally found in food. Inorganic from a chemistry standpoint, not from a food standpoint. So inorganic just means that there's no carbon in it. As you can see there in the picture, it's nitrogen and 3 oxygens. So it's mostly found in green leafy vegetables such as spinach, lettuce. Beets fall into that category as well. We just happen to eat the root of the vegetable, not the green leaves typically. So it's pretty widely distributed in our diet. If you're eating your veggies, you're probably getting a fair amount of nitrate. And it's something that you can eat large amounts and get that performance enhancing dose, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying. You don't want to eat a whole pile of beets or an entire bag of spinach before you head out for your run. It's just not practical. So you can get some real great health benefits from including these things in your diet in terms of the nitrate they provide. But to get that performance enhancing dose, it's just really not practical for athletes to be doing that. So it's not actually nitrate that causes the benefits that we see. It's actually nitric oxide. And that's nitric oxide is just nitrogen with 1 oxygen. You take 2 of the oxygens off through a process that we'll talk about here. And it's nitric oxide that exerts all these benefits within the body. I'm just going to move this screen so I can see that picture. There we go. Can everybody see my cursor? Can you see that? Just give me a nod if you can see it. Okay, perfect. So we're going to talk about the pathways here. So here in the middle, you can see we've got nitric oxide. And there's two ways that the body produces nitric oxide. The first one that was known about, it's been known about for quite a long time, is the pathway over here. It's an amino acid pathway. You can produce nitric oxide from the amino acid arginine, and citrulline also falls into this same pathway. Great pathway. This is actually where we get most of our nitric oxide at rest. It's sort of a slow trickle. We use nitric oxide for a lot of different things. You can see down at the bottom, you get increased exercise efficiency, enhanced mitochondrial respiration, improved calcium handling, vasodilation, glucose uptake, all leads to reduced muscle fatigue. So nitric oxide does a lot of really good things for us, and this is where we get a lot of it from. The problem with this pathway when we start talking about people that are exercising, especially people that are exercising hard, this pathway is one, it's oxygen dependent, so it's an aerobic pathway. There's also a lot of cofactors involved here, and these things are, they're plentiful, but they're also used for a lot of other things. And you need a lot of things for this pathway to function. They all have to be there, they have to be there in the proper amounts. And then NOS, this stands for nitric oxide synthase. So synthase is the enzyme that synthesizes nitric oxide. So the problem when you're exercising, by nature, your tissues become acidic and hypoxic. We can't get enough oxygen to those tissues, and the acidity rises because of some of those metabolic byproducts. So if you run out of oxygen, there's not enough oxygen for this pathway to function. And enzymes like to function in a very narrow pH range. So if you change the acidity of the environment, the enzyme doesn't function as well. So those two things combined kind of impair this pathway from producing nitric oxide in exercise. And what we see is even when they give arginine intravenously to people that are exercising and skip the digestive tract, we still don't actually see much of a rise in nitric oxide under exercise conditions. So this pathway essentially shuts down during exercise. Conversely, we have over here on the left, we have the nitrate, nitrite, nitric oxide pathway. So nitrite is the NO2 here in the middle. This pathway actually becomes enhanced under exercise conditions. It does not use oxygen, so it's an anaerobic pathway. And instead of an enzyme, it's actually bacterial anaerobes in your mouth. So a certain type of bacteria that handle this first step of the conversion of nitrate from nitrite. So what happens when you eat the nitrate, you swallow it, it goes into your stomach, it gets taken up into plasma circulation into your blood. You'll excrete a fair amount of it through your urine, that's just how it works. But your salivary glands will actually pull a lot of that nitrate out and concentrate it into your saliva. That bacteria in your mouth then gets to act on that nitrate and convert it into nitrite. You then swallow that nitrite again into your stomach, and two things happen to it. Some of it will get taken up into your blood and go directly to your cells. Some of it will actually get converted to nitric oxide in the stomach, in the conditions in the stomach. So the nitrite that goes to your cells, when you get acidosis and hypoxia, which is exactly what we see in exercising tissue, it actually causes an uptick in the conversion of nitrite to nitric oxide under those conditions. So when you're exercising, your body starts calling for more of this nitric oxide, and this is the pathway that will supply it. And also the nitric oxide that it's delivering directly into your blood will get used as well. The other cool thing about this pathway is that it's a cyclical pathway. So you can see the amino acid pathway, it just functions in one direction. Once we get to nitric oxide, we either use it or lose it essentially. But with this pathway, it can actually cycle back into either nitrate or nitrite. So you don't actually use it. And it can take the nitric oxide from this pathway and convert it into nitrate as well. That's actually how they test that this doesn't work under exercise. If you don't see a rise in plasma nitrate from providing arginine, then that means it's not getting to this nitric oxide step. So that's really the difference between the two pathways. It's easy to see that this pathway here becomes the dominant pathway under exercise and is what gives us all these things at the bottom here, all those performance enhancing benefits that we see with the product. So to talk a little bit more about some of the physiological functions that nitric oxide has for us, it's a potent vasodilator, so it opens up your blood vessels, allows more blood to flow through, and also reduces your blood pressure. So this is really where the research began. It began with clinical applications, really looking at reducing high blood pressure as an alternative to some of the high blood pressure medications. In fact, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded to two chemists, I believe back in 1998, for their work with nitric oxide and looking at some of the potential for the health benefits for things like this. Later on, they realized that there was the secondary pathway for nitric oxide production, and that's the nitric oxide pathway. And years later, they started to realize that not only could you get some health benefits out of this, they started seeing some of the other efficiency enhancements in terms of exercise, muscle function. So then people kind of caught on and said, hey, wait a minute, this could be an ergogenic aid. This could actually enhance performance and not just have some health benefits. So what we see is nitric oxide increases your VO2 max, which is your measure of aerobic fitness. And the other really cool thing it does is it decreases the oxygen cost of exercise, which is normally a pretty fixed value. All of us have essentially the same oxygen cost of exercise. You need X amount of oxygen to do X amount of work. What athletes are really good at is taking in and utilizing more oxygen than the average person. And that's how you get a higher VO2 max. But if you could decrease that oxygen cost of exercise, you could either continue to do the same work without having to inspire more oxygen, or you could inspire that same maximal amount of oxygen, but perhaps get a little bit more performance out of it on the top end. So that's the effects, the main effects that it really has. And of course, it's most beneficial in hypoxic conditions such as exercise, when we start hitting that point where we just can't get any more air. So some of the mechanisms of action of how this all works. So these are all the theorized mechanisms of action. Currently testing still ongoing. We're pretty solid on a few of these things, and then there's some new emerging theories as well that I'll cover. So vasodilation is the big one, the first one everybody knew about. It allows improved oxygen distribution to the exercising tissues and improved waste removal as well. One way to think of it is, you know, if the muscle over here was a fire, you want to put the fire out with a garden hose or a fire hose. You probably want the fire hose. So that's one of the big things it does. It allows those blood vessels to open up, flow that blood through more quickly and more easily. We talked a little bit about that already, that more nitric oxide is produced from nitrite in those hypoxic tissues. It starts calling for it. Here's the electron portion. So I'll go through this just real quick. So this is the inside of the mitochondria within the cell where all the energy production happens. Down here at the bottom right, what we want to get out of this in the end is ATP. It's essentially the energy currency that your body uses to perform any type of work that it's doing, whether it's making your heart beat, your other muscles contract, even doing little things like pushing sodium in and out of cells. All those kind of things use ATP. That's where the calories from our food go, is to make ATP. It's what our body can actually use. So this is where a lot of our ATP is made, is within the mitochondria. And here we have a membrane, an inner membrane, and then there's an intermembrane space, and not pictured, there's another membrane here. So this intermembrane space is a sealed gap. And what we do is we use electrons to get energy to pump these hydrogen ions in here, and it produces a pressure. It's kind of like blowing up a balloon. These hydrogen ions now want to get out of here because there's pressure. And that's what we use to drive this ATP synthase, this pump. It's actually a little piece of machinery that will assemble ATP from ADP by adding a third phosphate to it. So we pump all this out here. We do a lot of work. And nitric oxide can do two things in here. We get reduced proton handling, so these hydrogen ions are protons. This increases the mitochondrial efficiency. So we're taking these hydrogen ions from in here, pumping them against pressure into this intermembrane space, so it takes power to pump them in there. The problem is this membrane can be slightly permeable, and some of these ions can leak back through. So it's sort of like blowing up a balloon that has little tiny holes in it, and some of that air is escaping, and you keep having to blow that air in. Well, if you could seal up some of these gaps, that's like plugging some of the holes in that balloon, you wouldn't have to blow as hard to get that balloon blowing up. And that's one of the things that nitric oxide is thought to do, is to seal up some of these gaps. So you don't have to double pump these ions, which you may otherwise have to do. So that just allows you to do more work over here with less work over here. You get more ATP out more efficiently, more energy for your muscle contractions. The other thing that nitric oxide is thought to do is down here at the bottom, there is oxygen comes in here at the end. This is one of the big reasons we inspire more oxygen when we're doing work, is to accept these terminal electrons that are coming out. They've got to go somewhere. Oxygen and hydrogen will combine. You actually get water out. You get H2O, and that oxygen will help remove these terminal electrons out of the electron transport chain. So one of the theories is that nitric oxide can actually come in and assist by using its oxygen to accept these electrons. So you can kind of think, if you had to get these electrons out and you can only breathe in so much oxygen, if you could kind of turn a little switch and have something come in and assist that oxygen, in this case nitric oxide, you could get that work done more efficiently without having to actually breathe in more oxygen. And if you're at your limit of what you can take in, that's really where you get a lot of benefit, because now this machinery can kind of keep humming along and doing its work, even though you're at your oxygen intake and utilization limit. Some of the other mechanisms of action that it's thought to work through, there's increased force production and enhanced muscle contractions. This comes through improved calcium handling. So one of the ways that, or one of the things that has to happen when we contract and relax a muscle is calcium is moved around through the muscle cell. This is an ATP costly process. It takes energy to pump this calcium around. Nitric oxide can actually improve the efficiency of this process as well. So you're making more ATP more efficiently in the mitochondria. You're also wasting less of it in some of your muscle contractions. So those muscle contractions, if they're more efficient, you get more muscle contractions, whether you're running, biking, swimming, or really anything else that you're doing. If those contractions are more efficient, you get to have more of them. And also if they're producing more force per contraction, you're going to get more power out as well. There's also some thought that it could possibly delay neuromuscular fatigue. One of the studies I conducted, this is actually what we looked at. We looked at how the quadricep muscle was firing as we fatigued it, and tried to see if we could get that fatigue to be delayed through neuromuscular efficiency. So essentially, the harder you want to contract a muscle, the stronger that signal needs to go to that muscle. Eventually that process starts to break down for a variety of reasons. So if you could delay that and continue to send those strong signals to the muscle, you could get those strong contractions, that strong activity out for a longer period of time and not have a drop off in your power. There's also thought that it could increase mitochondrial density. So if you have more of those mitochondria in the tissue, they're producing more energy. They don't have to work as hard, or when things get tough, they can produce more energy when they're all working at their peak capacity. This is sort of a newer area of research that's coming out, and it's not totally known. It is a long-term effect. You're not going to get an increase in mitochondrial density from drinking a single shot of Beet It or whatever product it is. And it's not actually known if this is due directly to the nitric oxide, or if it's due to having increased training loads because of what the nitric oxide is doing. So we don't know if it's directly from the nitric oxide, or if it's the fact that you're able to train at a higher level when you're taking this, which then leads to increased mitochondrial density. But it has been shown the mitochondrial density is there. We just don't know exactly why it's happening yet. Could be a combination of the two as well. There's also some work looking at enhancement of cognitive function under exercise stress. So with the vasodilation, it has been shown that there's increased blood flow to the brain. Outside of athletic studies that they've done, there's been a lot of work in general health, disease prevention, and things like that, using this product, in fact. And one of the things they're actually looking at is possible treatment or delay of dementia and Alzheimer's through increased blood flow to the brain. One of the things we see in athletics is when things get really tough, sometimes we lose that ability to make those snap decisions. It kind of, that process gets a little slowed down as the body gets fatigued, and we get all these metabolic byproducts building up. Or maybe you just get distracted because you're so focused on your physical performance that's where your cognitive function is going. So in sports where, you know, maybe something like hockey or soccer where you have to receive a quick pass and then quickly think where it's going, where are all my teammates, it's good for that. For folks like yourselves, for triathlons, it's great for, you know, thinking about your transition and what you've got to do, or reacting to something, somebody goes down in front of you, having that quick split-second reaction. If you can improve that even by 1%, that could mean the difference between saving some time in a transition or avoiding a crash. So that's a newer area that's coming out, but a lot of promising results, and a really cool area. There's not a lot of supplements you can get a physical benefit as well as a cognitive benefit. And all these mechanisms I'm talking about are likely synergistic. There's some, like I said, that are sort of newer mechanisms that they're looking at. Some of them are quite well established, but it's thought that all of these things are kind of meshing together to really give us these performance enhancements that we see when we do the research. So some of the evidence behind nitrate supplementation and Beet It in particular, the early research focused almost exclusively on endurance athletes, particularly cycling, marathon, and triathlon. At this point, the efficacy is very well supported for endurance athletes and aerobic endurance. There's really no doubt that there's performance enhancement there. And they're starting to move into a lot of newer areas of research, looking at more at power output and things like that. There's now over 200 independent studies on nitrate research. The vast majority of these actually use Beet It in their research. And so some of the benefits are also being shown in shorter duration activities, especially in intermittent endurance sports. So soccer and hockey, a good example. Things where you go really hard, take a short break, go really hard, take a short break. For folks like yourselves, where those kind of benefits would come in is something like at the end of a race where you need to do a kick. You're going to have that little bit of extra power that you're able to tap into, and that little bit of extra endurance. It's almost like having an extra gear that you can kick into. In 2018, the International Olympic Committee actually released a position standpoint, not just on nitrate, but supplementation in general. Basically, a big team of researchers went through all the literature on a variety of supplements that were kind of considered to have enough body of evidence behind them. Nitrate happened to be one of them. So in 2018, they released this position standpoint, and what they found when they looked at the research on nitrate is it was associated with up to a 25% increase in time to exhaustion, 5% improvement in sprint performance, 3% increase in time trial performance, and a 1 to 3 increase in power output. So the 25% increase in time to exhaustion, that one, just due to the way they measure that, you sort of get a high thing. But the other ones are a little bit more of a reasonable number. But, you know, if you have let's say even a 2% improvement in your sprint performance, or a 1% increase in your time trial performance, that can be pretty big when you're talking about high level athletes. That could be the difference between standing on the podium or not. So once you have all your other kind of ducks in a row, and your training, your nutrition, all of that is on point, mentally you can suffer and you can push through. What do you do at that point? How do you get an edge? Well, if somebody can give you a 2 or a 3% edge on top of everything else you're doing, that's a pretty big improvement. especially if you start training that way and you start training at 2 or 3% higher than you were ever able to before, you're all of a sudden a much more dangerous athlete. So in that same report, what they found is that there is a minimum level, not surprisingly, of nitrate that's required. And what they found is that there really wasn't a lot of performance enhancement benefit under 300 milligrams of nitrate. You can still get some of the health benefits from it, but to really get those ergogenic performance enhancements, you need at least 300 milligrams of nitrate. This is a picture that we've put together based on a study. Some of you might know who Andrew Coggin is. He's a real big researcher in the cycling world, the sport nutrition world, does a lot of work, and he's done a lot of nitrate research himself. This is from a 2018 study. What they did is they went online and bought even more products than are shown here. They just bought all these products online or from stores, and what they wanted to test was the nitrate content. Nitrate is highly variable. It comes from the soil, so it really depends on whatever you're pulling out of that soil. It depends on how much nitrate is in that soil. So for beets, for example, even crop to crop, your nitrate content is going to vary because you're taking it from a different level of the soil. So it's something that if you just buy beets and make your own beet juice, one, it's messy and it's kind of a pain to do. You also have no idea how much nitrate you're getting. You might be getting a lot, you might be getting a little, you just don't know. And typically with a lot of the products that are on the market, that's what they do. They buy beets, they make their product, and you get what you get. So it's kind of all over the place, and it's hard to get a lot of nitrate. What Beet It has done is they've standardized their nitrate content. They're actually the only product on the market that's been shown consistently in independent research to have a standardized nitrate content. And we guarantee a minimum of 400 milligrams. So you can see, looking at the chart here, we're clearly the only one that's even at the minimum effective dose. And we're obviously the only ones that are above that. We're actually at 400 milligrams. So all these other products, not that there's anything wrong with them, you're just going to have to take more than one serving. So you're going to have more fluid in your stomach. You're probably going to spend more money. And the other problem is when you test a lot of other products batch to batch, and I've had this in my personal research experience testing other products, I've seen personally up to 300% variability batch to batch in some products in terms of the nitrates. So at that point, it's really just a crapshoot. You have no idea how much you're getting. You would never want to buy a bottle of Tylenol and just hope there was some active ingredient in there, right? You want to know what you're getting. That's what we've done with this product. We've standardized it, and we guarantee that you're going to get at least 400 milligrams of nitrate. So back to a little bit about me and how I first got involved with Beet It. I like to call this part, I know everything about beets and nobody cares. That's what my wife and I used to joke about towards the end of my master's. I knew so much about beets and so much about nitrate, but I was looking at it as, I really like this stuff, but it's a means to an end to get my master's, to go on, get a job, and be able to once again have a paycheck, which is really where I was at the end of my master's. So we used to joke about this. I know all this about beets. Nobody wants to listen to me. My family doesn't care. They're tired of hearing me talk about beets and nitrates and all that kind of stuff. So I finished my master's in December 2018. It's probably at that point, and not to brag because it's a silly thing to brag about, it's just by nature of what I was doing, I ended up probably being one of the most well-read people on nitrate in Canada. But so what? I was going to work in clinical research, hoping to one day get back in with athletes, but it's not like I was continuing to do nitrate studies. So what was I going to do with that? Through a real chance encounter, happened to run into a friend of mine who I had turned on to the product a couple years before. Him and his wife were really into it. I ran into him and found out that the product was no longer available in Canada. The Canadian distributor was gone through some unfortunate circumstances. So I remember coming home and saying to my wife, "Hey, do you know you can't get Beet It in Canada anymore? There's no distributor." And I'm kind of thinking maybe I should contact them. And she went, yeah, you know everything about beets and nobody cares, but they might. So yeah, give them a call. So that's what I did. I contacted them. I learned that they were seeking a distributor. There was a couple people in the running. I quickly sat down and wrote a business plan over a few days. Told them who I was, told them about my experience with their product and my knowledge of nitrates, and I ended up being awarded the distribution rights. So I brought the product back to Canada last year. Was thrilled to do so. I was really doing it because I believed in this product so much, and I wanted Canadians to have easy access to it again, to not have to bring it in from the States and worry about duties and things like that. So we opened to the public in mid-July with absolutely no idea what we were doing. I have no business training at that point or anything. I just kind of jumped in with both feet, was really excited. Still don't have any idea what I'm doing. I feel like sometimes, I'm everything from the social media guy to packing the orders to doing the finances. It's been a real steep learning curve, but it's been an awesome ride and a lot of fun so far. So I'm really loving it. But why would I choose Beet It? Obviously I had some history with the product. I was interested in the supplement industry, and I knew it was a place I wanted to be. I was going into research and clinical research, but I always kind of thought, if I could work for a supplement company and do product development or something, I would really like that. I hate sales. I've worked in sales before. I've worked for an insurance company. I hate selling stuff to people. It's just not me. And I hate being sold to myself. For me, show me the evidence, prove something to me. I don't care what you say. Hand me a piece of paper that was done by somebody that had no financial interest in this, and prove it to me that way. That's just always how I've kind of been, and that was only enhanced through doing my studies as well. So obviously with Beet It, with nitrates, there was a large body of supporting research. I'd read it all more than I care to remember at that point. And with most of the studies being done on Beet It, that was a real sign to me, if researchers are trusting this, because the reason researchers trust is because they know they're getting a certain amount of nitrate. And if you want to do a real tight research study, you don't just want to guess at what you're giving somebody, you want to know exactly what you're giving them. And that's why researchers gravitate towards this product. It was in fact originally developed for research. There was a researcher in the UK by the name of Andy Jones, and he was doing research on nitrate supplementation with athletes. But he sort of approached the company and said, look, they were making beetroot juice at that time, but not the concentrates. He said, look, I'm giving your beetroot juice to my athletes, but the problem is they have to drink like half a liter of it and then run to exhaustion on a treadmill, and it's just not working. And also the nitrate content varies a little bit. So I don't really know what I'm getting until I have a chemist test it, and it's really tough. And so they worked together and developed the original Beet It product, not Beet It Sport, but the original lower dose nitrate one, so that they could standardize the nitrate content. And so that instead of drinking 500 milliliters, you only had to drink 70 milliliters, because a single 70 milliliter shot is about equal to half a liter of regular beetroot juice. So that's really how the product was developed. Like I mentioned earlier, only product proven to deliver that dose of nitrate, and has a higher dose per serving than any other product out there. Another thing that appealed to me is it was an all-natural product. If you look at the label, literally the only two ingredients are 98% concentrated beetroot juice, which we concentrate ourselves, and 2% lemon juice. That's in there as a little bit of a preservative. We don't add any other preservatives or flavoring. And it's in there as well to cut a little bit of that earthy taste of the beets. If any of you have had a chance to try the product, it's got a pretty strong taste. People kind of love it or hate it. I actually kind of like it. It's not something I wake up and crave or anything, don't get me wrong, but I like it. It's like a real hearty kind of V8. Some people describe it as watery ketchup. It's strong. It'll wake you up, but I'd still prefer to have that over half a liter of beetroot juice, or to be boiling beets in my own kitchen and trying to eat 6 to 8 beets, which is what we use to get that amount of nitrate into one shot. So the fact that it was all natural and two ingredients on the label for a supplement that's proven to work, that's that's almost unheard of. So that was a big selling point to me. We have a proprietary concentration process, as well as the company structure. It allows for unique methods to ensure that minimum nitrate content. There's a variety of reasons that nobody else has been able to do this and prove it consistently. It's really because of the process we use and the structure of the parent company that makes Beet It, sort of positions us uniquely within the market. I couldn't just start making this product. It would cost me millions of dollars. I don't have the infrastructure, and that's really where our advantage lies with this product and why nobody else in the world has been able to match this. It's used by some of sports elite around the world. Another big thing that really caught my eye, even back when I started in 2013, Olympians were using it, professional athletes were using it. This is one of the big partnerships that Beet It has, the NN running team. They've been using it for years. Eliud Kipchoge, of course, but the entire team uses it. But he's used it to break the world record marathon. Also, when he ran the sub 2 hour marathon, he was using it. All of those world records that team is breaking, it's certainly not because of our product, but they're using our product. So to have people at that level in the marathon world believe in it is huge, and they've selected this product for a reason. So a real big partnership. Another thing that always appealed to me is it was Informed Sport or Informed Choice certified. Just knowing that those products are safe and tested is a big thing. Whether you're a high level athlete or you're somebody that just cares about your health, you probably want to know that they're produced safely and that they're tested. So every batch is tested against the WADA doping list. So for an athlete that's drug tested, it's just peace of mind knowing that it has been tested, it has been screened. Also, the facility where it's produced is inspected and certified. A cool thing about where Beet It is made, typically when you buy a supplement, a jar of powder or whatever, it's made in a supplement manufacturing facility, and a lot of supplements can be run on the same machine. And sometimes what will happen is it's not actually the product has spiked or tainted its product, it's the machine has tainted its product with something that was produced on it before. Maybe the machine wasn't cleaned properly, and now the thing that you've bought that should have been safe has a banned substance. Doesn't even have to be a drug. It could just be a substance that's banned in your particular sport or league or whatever it is. Now you get a positive drug test. It happens. We've seen it happen to professional athletes. Sometimes you kind of wonder, oh, I was taking this and I thought it was safe, and it must, well, maybe that's a story, but there has been instances where that's happened. The cool thing about Beet It is it's made in a fruit and vegetable juice manufacturing facility. So the worst thing you're going to get spiked with is maybe you get a drop of carrot juice in your beet juice. You're not going to get, there's no other supplements produced in the facility. Regardless of that, the facility is inspected and certified. Informed Sport also randomly tests products 2 times a year. They just purchase them off the shelf the same way a consumer would and test those products to ensure that companies aren't delivering clean products to them and then actually selling something different. And you can actually take the batch number on your product and check it on their website. Just to go back to that, if you do ever see any type of certification on a supplement like this, whether it's NSF, Informed Sport, anything else, go to their website and check it. It does happen that people put fake certifications on things. You can go to Informed Sport, you'll see our logo. You can take the batch number off your bottle and see that they actually tested the batch number that you have, just to kind of give you that peace of mind. About how to actually best use Beet It and how to get the best benefits out of it. So a study back in 2015, research has shown that blood nitrate levels occur 1 to 3 hours post-ingestion. The whole point of this study was to look at the pharmacokinetics of the product. So with blood levels peaking 1 to 3 hours post-ingestion, as opposed to a regular pre-workout where you might take it half an hour before, with Beet It, you want to take it about 1 to 2 hours prior. That gives time for those blood levels to peak and for your salivary glands to start pulling the nitrate out and start causing that conversion process. When you take it may depend on the type or duration of your activity. So if you've got a real long session coming up, say you've got a long run or a brick session that you're doing, you might want to take it 1 hour before to kind of give you that slow trickle and let it really kick in as you're training. If you've got a shorter session or you know you're doing like a sprint triathlon or something, you might want to take it 2 hours before to ensure that when you start, it's already hitting you. And then really long things, you know, if you're doing a full Ironman or something like that, I've got a triathlete that I work with, and what we figured out for him is he'll take a shot about an hour to about 2 hours before he starts his swim, and then he hits another one as soon as he gets on the bike to ensure that he doesn't have a drop off, because his activity is going to be so long. You don't want to have any drop off, even though the effects are sustained for about 5 or 6 hours before they start to drop off. It's just kind of ensure high level athlete, you know, you kind of want to make sure that you've got all those gaps taken care of. Something that's important to remember when you're taking any type of nitrate supplement, because you need that bacteria in your mouth, do not use mouthwash. There's actually a study that was specifically done to look at this, and all they did was give them Beet It and beat it with mouthwash, and you actually get almost no rise in plasma nitric oxide levels if you use the mouthwash. So the nitrate hits your mouth, but it just stays as nitrate, and your body can't really do anything with it, and you end up just eventually peeing it all out without getting any of the benefit from it. So I always tell people, please continue to brush your teeth. Don't stop brushing your teeth for a week. It almost completely inactivates. You really won't chew gum either. There's certain types of gum. If you have a gum that says it's anti-cariogenic or fights cavities, don't chew that gum either. It can have some of the same effects. So one big thing to keep in mind when you are using the product, don't use any of those things. And finally, how do you best use it? So this is sort of a race day dosing guideline that we have. You would take 1 to 2 shots per day for up to 6 days. 1 shot a day is enough for most people. If you're a real top level athlete and your physiology, your VO2 max is really kind of at that elite level, you might need 2 shots. Somebody like Kipchoge, we would give him 2 shots, even though he's not a guy. His physiology is just so maxed out that he might need a little bit extra. But you know, that's sort of a personal preference thing. 1 shot per day is enough for most people. Same thing, 1 to 3 hours before your training. And then you can take 1 to 2 shots. A lot of people like to take 2 shots on the race day just to be sure. Same thing, 1 to 3 hours before, or you can stagger them as well. You can also use this in your training. You know, if your event or race day in that case might be your real big session that you've had a build leading up to through your training block, and that's your big long run, or you've got a testing day where you're testing to see where you're really at, where your fitness is at. You could use that as your event or your race day. You can also use it acutely with just a single dose, and you don't have to do this dosing guideline. You could just, if you're for myself, for example, I only get a chance to get out for a run 2, maybe 3 times a week. I'm not training for anything. I'll usually just take 1 that day. Sometimes I'll take 1 sort of the night before as well, but typically I'll just take 1 about 2 hours before I head out for my run, and then that's it. I might not take another shot again for a few days. The effects do build up to about 6 days. So that's why if you have an event or a race, you'd want to have that build. But if you just need a kind of a kick in the butt, you're feeling a little sluggish, or you just want to squeeze a little bit more out of that session, maybe you're feeling really good and hey, I want to kind of crank it up today, you can take a shot of Beet It, and there is benefits shown in research from a single dose as well. So kind of some options to take it. It's really a matter of preference, how you like to take it and how much of the product you want to use. So that's kind of all I have for the science, how to use it. That being said, let's see the time, I don't know what it is. My favorite part of doing talks like this is questions. So if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, please jump in if anybody else has questions. I definitely have a couple. First of all, thank you so much. I felt like I was right back in university chemistry through a bit of that, and I was trying to wrap my head around some of that stuff, but it was great. And the other thing I was going to say is just how awesome it is that I, that you have ended up being the Beat It person.
Yeah,
With
it's been a
with all of that,
crazy ride.
with all of that background knowledge in that specific space, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it is.
yeah, so that's pretty cool. I just for our audience here, I don't know you. I've like this is the first time we've met. We've
Yeah,
just
no, we've never
chatted
talked
online.
before.
So it,
I've spoken to Mark on the phone once,
that's right.
and we've communicated a lot through email. But yeah, this is the first time we've ever had a chance to talk face to face. It's
Yeah.
cool to see everybody.
So it's neat. It's neat to hear your story and your journey to being with this product. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll just ask. I had two questions.
Sure.
The first, and you can answer it or not, but I thought it was kind of a fun one. This is a bit of a conspiracy theory, but I heard that the British Olympic Association, they knew about uh, uh, they knew about beets and nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide? Did I say that right?
Nitric.
Nitrate. Sorry.
Nitrous oxide makes cars go fast, not
Yeah,
people.
that's
Yeah.
this is why I'm not. This is why I'm not selling this product. But I heard that the science came out prior to the 2012 Olympics, and in I think it was in Great Britain, they basically like they said you're not publishing that until after the 2012 games because we want it for our athletes. So I've heard that. I don't know if it's true, but I
You
thought
know,
that was
I
funny.
don't have any confirmation on that. Beat It is out of the UK.
Okay.
That's where they're based. That's where the product was developed. That's where Andy Jones is from. He's out of Exeter University. I've heard that too. There was some work published. I think it first started being published in 2008, 2009,
Yeah.
but it always takes the sporting community a bit of, that's the scientific community is starting to look at it. And then you'll have some coaches kind of start to watch and slowly start to adopt, but it always takes a few years for people to really jump on board.
Yeah.
And I've heard that too, that I've heard there was some cycling teams in Europe as well,
Yeah.
that kind of knew about it for a while, and the athletes were under strict instructions to not talk about this.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a good advertisement for it. If you have high level athletes that are like, this is so good, you don't tell your friends about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, well, a fun story to maybe contemplate that makes more mystery to the brand in a way, which I think is kind of fun. Then the other thing I was just going to ask is, a lot of pretty high level kind of sciencey stuff. If you're using it, what are just the three simple things that you might notice as a positive? So I know you went through them at the beginning, but what are the three things, like if you had this before a long run, what might you notice?
Yeah, so that's a good point. The science and the data is great, but how does that really translate to what are you going to see? What are you going to feel as an athlete in your training and your competition? So what you'll probably notice, so it's not like taking a pre-workout where it's loaded with caffeine and it kind of hits you and you get that kick and you feel fired up and you go out and do something. You're not going to feel that. You're not really going to feel it. You're not going to get a rush. You're not going to say, oh, it's working now, I feel it, I'm tingling or something. You don't get any of that. Where you're going to notice it is that point where things kind of start to suck, where things get hard. That run sounded like a really great idea, but now you're going, why do I do this to myself? You're kind of in that phase.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to notice that you'll kind of hit that point. It's still going to feel hard, but you'll kind of feel that point where, okay, I'm ready to stop, I'm ready to give up, or I can't push any harder. And you'll kind of just feel like you have just an extra gear or a little bit more to tap into. That's probably what you'll notice. You might not even actually notice it in the moment, but if you're somebody that, and I would imagine most of you are, you probably are recording some kind of data. Sometimes people will notice it then too. I see it a lot with cyclists when they're on the bike. They'll say that they had a really good ride, and they'll actually even reflect on it and go, yeah, you know, maybe I held back a little bit, maybe I didn't push as hard. And then they look at their power meter and they've got 3 personal bests. You know, they've put out more power than they ever have before. And that's really common to see. So you kind of get this delay in fatigue, this higher power output, and just sort of this ability to kind of keep going. And again, it's not going to turn you into, you know, it's not going to take you from 15th place to standing on the top of the podium, but it might be the difference in standing on the podium or not. You know, that few percent difference. So it's we're not making any wild claims. We're not saying it's going to make you a world-class athlete, but if it gives you that little bit extra to tap into, when folks like yourself have probably done everything you can to maximize that, if you can take something once, you know, 1 to 6 times, and all of a sudden have a 2 or 3% improvement, that's a pretty big difference when you're standing on the finish line of a race. A 2 to 3% difference in time is pretty huge in a tight race. So that's really what you're going to notice. It's going to make that activity that should be hard feel a little bit easier, or that activity that's kind of your maximum last a little bit longer. And then of course there's some recovery benefits as well, which I didn't really touch on, but that improved vasodilation is going to persist after your activity. It's going to help clear some of those waste products out quicker and get some of the necessary things for recovery, whether it's the food that you're eating at your post-workout, the glucose and the protein to rebuild. It's going to help that get to the cell quicker. There's also some anti-inflammation as well, from the antioxidants and the betaine that are retained in the product when we concentrate it. You're still going to get those benefits as well. So you get some recovery benefits as well, which is really nice.
Cool. Thanks. Does anybody else want to jump in here with a question?
Yeah, I just had a question, Mark, about
Sure.
Alicia and I kind of take half a shot kind of daily just as maintenance.
Yep.
Is there kind of a time frame that we should be doing that, or is it just we could just half a shot?
Yeah, the half a shot thing, and we have a lot of people that do that. They sort of just take it daily maintenance, and then they'll ramp it up when they have a competition or something, and they'll do the actual dosing protocol. But for people that are just taking a half a shot daily, either for the health benefits or for the maintenance benefits, I would still do it the same time in relation to your exercise. So you know, take it 1 to 2 hours before your exercise. But if you have an off day and it's a rest day, just take it when you feel like taking it.
Okay.
The performance enhancement benefits, you're going to get about 4 to 6 hour window once it hits that peak.
Yeah.
But the health benefits, you're looking at anywhere from 12 to 24 hours before you return to baseline levels. So
Okay.
so you can just kind of take it whenever you want. It's a good question.
Anybody else want to jump in there, or guys all good? Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving up a bit of time this morning. And
Oh, thanks for having me. It's Good Friday, and I'm working from home anyway. I almost forget what outside looks like. So, I'm here. I was thrilled to ask to be on. It's great to see some familiar faces and actually get to talk to you guys. It's really cool. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Really appreciate it, and thanks to everybody who jumped in this morning. And yeah, I'm sure we'll be speaking with you soon.
Yeah, hopefully next time we speak, we're talking about partnering up for some races and stuff, and doing some cool stuff. So, but
Totally.
Stay safe, everybody, and keep training hard, and we'll talk again in the future, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.